Consider a solicitor named Zainab. She transfers £100,000 from a trust account into her personal bank account, which currently sits at zero. Shortly after, Zainab wins £350,000 on the lottery and deposits those winnings into the same account. The trust funds and her personal funds are now completely mixed. She then makes two withdrawals. First, she pays off £50,000 in personal debt. Second, she uses the remaining £400,000 to buy a house. The property market booms, and that house appreciates to £500,000. Then the situation changes. Zainab is declared bankrupt. If you sue her personally to recover the stolen money, you join the back of the line as an unsecured creditor and recover nothing. If you try to claim the house, you have to prove mathematically which part of that mixed bank account actually bought it. Recovering these funds requires a dual-track strategy, knowing when to pursue a personal claim against the trustee, an action in personam, and when to track the property itself using a proprietary claim, an action in rem. Let's start with the personal claim. An action in personam targets the trustee directly. It requires them to satisfy the trust's loss from their own personal property, which is only effective if they actually have sufficient assets to meet the claim. First, identify the breach and the liable trustee. Trustees aren't vicariously liable for co-trustees, but a passive trustee can be liable if their negligence facilitated the theft. Finally, an essential requirement is causation. Consider Target Holdings v. Redferns. A firm of solicitors breached their trust instructions by releasing loan money before a property purchase was complete. The borrower ultimately defaulted, and the lender suffered a significant loss. The House of Lords applies. In Target Holdings, the loss was actually caused by a separate fraudulent property valuation and a market recession. The financial outcome would have been the same even if the solicitors had held the money properly. Therefore, the claim for compensation failed. Always run the causation test first. If there is no measurable loss but for the breach, a personal claim does not exist. Even if causation is established, we must consider the final stage of the analysis, whether the trustee has a valid defense that absolves them of liability. Under the precedent of Re-Pauling's settlement trust, a trustee can deploy the knowledge and consent defense. If a beneficiary is of full age, fully informed of the facts, and concurs with the breach, they cannot later sue the trustee for it. Alternatively, Section 61 of the Trustee Act 1925 allows the court to excuse a trustee who acted honestly and reasonably. Note, however, that courts are reluctant to grant this relief to professional trustees, such as solicitors. If a trustee is found liable, they have two avenues to share the financial burden. They can seek an equitable indemnity, allowing for 100% recovery from a co-trustee if that individual fraudulently obtained a benefit or exerted a controlling influence. If the strict conditions for indemnity aren't met, they can rely on the Civil Liability Contribution Act 1978. Under this statute, the court apportions the financial responsibility based on what it deems just and equitable. But if the trustee is bankrupt, or if they used the stolen funds to buy an asset that has increased in value, a personal claim is insufficient. At this point, the claimant must switch to the proprietary track. A proprietary claim, or an action in rem, asserts ownership over the trust property itself, or any substitute asset that now represents it. To identify that property as it changes form, say from cash to shares and then to real estate, you use a process called tracing. Tracing is not a remedy in itself. It is the evidentiary process of tracking the asset through various changes. This summary outlines the rules. In clean substitution, trust property exclusively buys a new asset, allowing a direct claim or lien. Mixed substitution is complex, occurring when stolen trust money represents only a fraction of an asset's purchase price, like a house. The House of Lords established the rule for this in Foskett v. McEwen. The beneficiary has the right to elect one of two options. They can claim a proportionate share of the mixed asset or enforce a lien against it. This choice is strategic. If the mixed asset has increased in value, the beneficiary claims a proportionate share to capture the profit. If the asset has depreciated, they enforce a lien, forcing the defaulting trustee to suffer the loss first. Proprietary claims carry two distinct advantages. They are not subject to the 6-year statutory limitation period, and they take priority over regular unsecured creditors in the event of bankruptcy. The central challenge in tracing occurs when a trustee mixes stolen trust funds with their own personal money inside a bank account that sees regular traffic. To untangle this, equity relies on legal presumptions. The court presumes a guilty trustee spends their own personal money first, preserving the trust funds in the account as long as possible. But what if the trustee withdraws money, makes a profitable investment, and then dissipates the rest on worthless expenses? Applying re hallat strictly would leave the trust with a balance of zero. To prevent this, the court applies the investment exception from re Otway. Under re Otway, the wrongdoer cannot claim ownership of a profitable asset until all trust funds are fully restored. The trust gets a first charge over any identifiable asset purchased from the mixed fund. There is a mathematical limit to this recovery, known as the lowest intermediate balance rule from Roscoe v. Winder. A proprietary claim cannot exceed the lowest balance the account reached after the trust money was deposited. Later deposits by the trustee do not automatically replenish the stolen trust funds. The legal dynamic shifts entirely when a fraudulent trustee mixes money stolen from two entirely separate innocent trusts. Historically, the courts applied the rule from Clayton's case, which is first in, first out, or FIFO. As detailed in this example, the first withdrawal is automatically attributed to the first trust that deposited money. However, Clayton's case is frequently criticized because the outcome relies entirely on the chance order of deposits. Because both trusts are equally innocent victims, modern courts prefer the approach established in Barlow-Clowes v. Fawn. The remaining funds and any purchased assets are shared ratably, in direct proportion to each trust's initial contribution. The court will discard the first-in, first-out rule if applying it would be impractical or if it contradicts the obvious intentions of the parties. The dividing line is intent. When a trustee steals, the equitable presumptions of Hallett and Otway favor the victim. When multiple innocent trusts are involved, the law prioritizes proportionality. We can now return to Zainab's £100,000 theft. Applying the presumption from Ray Hallett, Zainab is deemed to have spent her own £50,000 lottery winnings first when she paid her personal creditors. This means the $400,000 used to purchase the house consists of the fully intact £100,000 of trust money and $300,000 of her personal money. Next, we apply the election from Foskett. The trust contributed 1/4 of the original purchase price. Because the house appreciated to $500,000, the beneficiaries will elect to take a 25% proportionate share, capturing $125,000 and realizing a $25,000 profit. This recovery is only possible through equitable tracing. As established in Egypt v. Jackson, common law tracing breaks down the moment funds are mixed in a bank account or transferred electronically. There is a specific requirement to access these rules. As the summary of the Chase Manhattan Bank case outlines, you can only use equitable tracing if a fiduciary relationship exists between the claimant and the defendant. Fortunately, the courts have expanded this. Even a thief may be treated as a constructive trustee, meaning they owe fiduciary duties to their victim, which allows the use of equitable tracing to recover stolen items. Whether you are seeking personal compensation for a breach or tracking substituted assets through an insolvent estate, these rules ensure that the core duty of a trustee, to act honestly and for the benefit of the beneficiaries, remains enforceable.